So I'm going to talk about money and the difference between a poor person, a middle class person, and a rich person. There's always a difference, in the way they spend their money, how they manage their money, and that sort of thing. A lot of people actually that are very wealthy or rich, they started out poor. And I've read this book. It's called Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is where I got this whole concept from. So what I'm going to be sharing with you in this video, it's going to be derived from this. And if you haven't read this book, I highly suggest you read it because it can potentially change your life, right? You don't have to. You can be anybody. You could be a person. I mean, like any person. It doesn't matter who you are. Even if you don't want to like start your own business or anything like that, there's always other alternatives that a person even on the side could build an income, right? And a lot of times you could build an income that exceeds what you make at your just over broke, also known as a job. But yeah, so I'm gonna hop right into it. So every single month in their life they have expenses and they also have income, right? So and this marker, forgive me, I don't know, it's not doing very well. I gotta go pick up a new marker, but it's still readable. So I'm still gonna do this video. All right, so everybody's got expenses and they got income, right? And then you also have something everybody knows as assets, and then everybody also has liabilities. Right, so everybody's got assets and they got liabilities, right? So assets, I'm going to define them as, I'm going to go by the Rich Dad Poor Dad definition, and that definition is money that's coming in. So it's basically income, right? And then liabilities are, they're basically expenses, or liabilities are things that you owe, right? So they're very similar, but the traditional way is just assets are something that you own. And something that you own, it could still be an expense because you could still pay for it. Like even people consider like cars as an asset. I mean, they are, but the thing is you're not making money off them because like you potentially could, but the second you drive a brand new car off a lot, it loses its value by 15 or 13%. Right. So most commonly people in life, they have incomes, right? And a poor person, what this would look like, every single month they have income, and their income goes directly right towards their liabilities, right? It goes right out their expense window, right? And that expense window goes all the way around to the liabilities, right? And that's essentially how it goes, right? Your income, you get paid, and then you got expenses every month. I mean, everybody's got to pay for food, rent, or mortgage, or things like that. But here's the difference. Where does your income come from, right? Your income comes from your assets, right? So your assets will come right into your income, and when your assets come into your income, that's usually from a job, right? Most people work a job. That's your asset. But the difference between a poor person is they will just have that their only asset is their source of income is their job, their job. And a rich person, the difference would be that a rich person would have multiple assets that they built, right? So they wouldn't just have a job, they would have a couple different assets in here, right? So in a poor or middle class person, usually all their money goes towards expenses. They want to buy the brand new car, they want to buy the new toys, the ATVs, girls like to buy stuff for their hair, I mean, that stuff's all cool, right? And there's nothing wrong with buying that stuff, but most people in society, that's all they get caught up in doing. But instead, whatever money you have left over at the end of the month from your job, you could take that money and you could put it towards, investing into some assets. Right, and I'm not going to talk about potential assets besides a job in this video. I'm not going to talk about different assets. That is for a different video. You can ask me, or if you're on YouTube right now, just look on my channel, Or just message me if you see this on Facebook. Yeah, regardless, rich people, that's the difference. Is they're always putting their money in towards assets. Of course they do. They do have some expenses that go out the window. They buy some nice stuff. Nice fancy car, or whatever. Of course, but they do keep that in mind, that they want to keep their expenses low and their assets high. Right? So that's the difference. In middle class people, a lot of times all they do is just expenses, 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 expenses. That's it. And their only income is from their job. And they'll stay that way, and that's essentially called the rat race. And usually a lot of people, the more their money goes up, the more they're going to spend. That's something to always take into consideration. Because it's good to know this before you even get wealthy, because if let's say you win $1 million, we all hear the stories of people they win the $1 million, and then the next thing you know, you hear they're broke. Why? Because they went and bought all this nice stuff. They went and bought like a big house. They bought a nice fancy car. Went and had having dinners every day and living like they're large. Maybe they probably quit their job or whatever. There's a lot of people that are like that, and the next thing you know, they're back to square one. They end up working a job again. And it gets sad to see, because like, even for me, if I won $1 million, knowing and learning this from this book, and this is a simple concept, but people don't really recognize, and they don't really, think about it. And even if you do know it, it's always good to review, of course, even for myself. But I would know that, okay, yeah, if I won $1 million, I would save a lot of that money. I would, obviously go have some fun. I'll go out and buy a nice car and things like that. But I would keep my expenses low. Right, I would still have fun in life, and you'd still enjoy life, but you don't want to just go and buy all this nice stuff, because then you got all these racked up expenses, because these things cost money. You go buy a car, you gotta pay for gas, you gotta pay for insurance, you gotta pay for all this extra stuff. Right? We all know this, of course. So you gotta find that balance, right? And actually becoming very wealthy, you gotta know these things, because you could make a really good amount of money. Let's say you made $500,000 in a business, right? If you're in a network marketing business, you own your own business, you have rental properties, such things like that. You could really mess yourself up, and a lot of people do, even that are wealthy, because they ended up putting their money. Sometimes people put their money in bad assets, so sometimes it's good to study that. But I'm not gonna talk about that in this video. It'd make it way too long. Alright, so that's the key, right? If you want to become wealthy, I don't know where you're at in your life, it really doesn't matter, but you always you can do something on the side, like keep your job, of course, but learn about building assets, right? And the more assets that you build, and the less you keep your expenses low, the more money you're gonna have, right? And then the more rich you can get. Because let's say let's say for example you took $5,000, you invested it into something, and then you made double that, or maybe you just made $4,000 back. Now you got $9,000. So what you can do with that? Maybe you double that, and then you do it again and again, and then the next thing you know, you got something like 40-something thousand dollars, and you buy a rental property, right? You buy an apartment or something, and then the next thing you know, you're making residual income of whatever the apartment was rented at, or something like that. Just for example's sake, of course. But like that's what potentially you could do. But instead of just getting paid from your job, going right into the expense category, buying all this cool and fancy stuff, which is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with working a job either, of course. I'm not bashing that. Well, I don't totally agree with it, but yeah. So and then going right into your expense category. And then just got more liabilities and things you owe, and you took out a car and you got to pay payments every single month, right? I mean, it's just, you can really get yourself stuck, right? Instead of just, investing as much as you can in your education, and, building assets and building a number of assets. So that's the difference. And, yeah, so I highly suggest reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I'll see you on the top. I'll see you, when you're very wealthy, you can always thank me, or something like that. So take care.